I thought it would be a good idea to just talk about ASHA, which was a conference in Seattle, where we had just like SLPs from all over the country fly in and talk through different brands. There were like vendors there. I spent a good amount of time going through like bulletins and posters, super similar to like any other medical conference where there are a lot of researchers, and then there's just like fun random stuff. So like different groups of SLPs were going out, getting dinner and stuff like that. And then there's a lot of dogs for some reason. That was pretty fun.
I saw your Instagram with the dog.
Yeah, I don't know. They made like a really fun environment. Also, like Seattle just has like an awesome, they have an awesome convention center. It just like feels really good, kind of random. But,
it was really good. The only beef I had with the Seattle Convention Center is that they split the exhibit hall into 2 exhibit halls. I don't know if they've ever done that before. I think it's just the layout of the Seattle Convention Center. But I had tons of SLPs tell me that the exhibit hall, like they'd never seen it split like that before.
So, are you talking about how it was in like 2 different buildings?
Correct. Yeah. Which in the past, now I've only been to ASHA, I've been twice, and it was in Boston both times. But it was just this massive exhibit hall. And like the way they did it in Seattle, they put all of the like super big names in the big main exhibit hall. And then some of like I was in the entrepreneurial section and the nonprofit. And there was like a lot of school districts and university programs like upstairs, which worked out really well. I actually loved being up there. Because it would have been really, really overwhelming to get all the traffic from like the main exhibit hall, I think, for my first time doing a booth.
Right.
But it also would have been really cool and convenient to all be in one spot.
Yeah, it's also like a zero-sum game for attention too, though, right? Like I wouldn't want to be in the section that has all the like really big funded booths.
Yeah, and some of them go all out. I mean, some of the really big names in speech therapy, like in Boston last year, Joram speech sound cue cards. Jenny is her name, and she's freaking brilliant. She does these like speech therapy cards, and she had like a line down the hall, like down the aisle to get to her booth. Like so she's like a huge one. And then Super Duper is another one, and they usually have like, they take up the equivalent of like 4 to 6 booth spaces with their huge setups, which sounds awesome, but that would be really overstimulating for me.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think for the SLPs walking through too, yeah. But
yeah, definitely. I mean, I saw that Presence had an entire lounge, almost like a Capital One lounge.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Just for them.
I didn't even get to the big exhibit hall one time. I couldn't get away
you were
from
grinding.
it. So I didn't get to see it this year.
Wait, so like you didn't spend any time in the other building? You're just
I literally was at my booth sweating the whole time. It was just like going, which is why I was actually happy that I was in the like more non-ideal location, because the few moments that there was kind of like a break in the crowd, I could actually like compose myself and like get some stuff done, restock. I think if it were in the main one, there would not have been those breaks.
Yeah. I mean, there were barely any breaks at your booth. It felt like it would be maybe like 10 or 20 minutes max.
Oh, for
maybe
sure.
5 minutes max.
Yeah, the booth next to me, they were in audiology solutions. They were so nice. It was Lexi, and I cannot remember her husband's name. He was the audiologist.
Are they from Ireland?
No, that was the other side,
Okay.
on the other side of me. And they figured out like the times the classes were letting out. So they were like, oh, the classes are about to let out, so there's going to be a crowd. And I was like, I was not smart enough to figure out that pattern.
Got you. Just to provide like really quick context, Steph had a booth for her startup, Chomper Champs. Maybe you could just give like a really quick primer on that and why you did a booth at ASHA.
Yeah, so Chomper Champs is my invention. I call it a speech therapy companion tool. It kind of plays off the popularity of feeding things in speech therapy. Like for decades, SLPs have created these little mouths that you can feed things to. So like it'll be like a cardboard cutout of a mouth, and they'll put it on like a tissue box, or they'll cut out a hole in like a brown paper bag, and like kids can feed things to, but none of those things are durable, like actual true therapy equipment. Or they'll feed mini objects to like games like Pop the Pig, but the minis get stuck. It's not designed for that. So Chomper Champs is my solution to that, as a speech therapy companion tool designed to feed mini objects, mini photo cards that are included with the Chomper Champs for speech sound, and then like real food and feeding therapy. So that's kind of my synopsis of what Chomper Champs is. And this year was like a super unique opportunity for me because the ASHA convention was here in Seattle and I'm in Washington State. So I just had to pack up my car and drive a couple hours to get to Seattle, which was super convenient because shipping things is really expensive. Like all of those booths that had to ship in from all over the US, like that's a huge expense and like the logistics are kind of tricky.
Right.
And also, if you've never had a booth before and you're a member of ASHA, the booth is like 75% cheaper than the main booths. Like the main booths in the exhibit hall are like $3,000 to $4,000, and the entrepreneur booth is under $1,000. Like it's a great deal.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the stars kind of aligned where...
Well, when you say entrepreneur booth, like all the schools that were by you, they're not entrepreneur booths. So like, are they also cheaper because they're like education or something?
Yes, there's like a nonprofit price too.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
And is the purpose of the schools, are those like, I don't know, they felt like grad programs for speech or like communication. So I'm wondering like, were there a bunch of undergrads there that they were trying to sell to, or like what was the purpose of them being there?
So there were two types of schools, right? There's like the school districts, which are recruiting SLPs.
And then there's like University of Arkansas or something.
Yeah, that guy. Oh, what was his name? Jeff, I think. He was legit. We were just...
Cool.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Nice.
We chatted. And like they offer a doctoral program all online for SLPs or like an additional certification program. But some of them are just trying to recruit grad students too. So I think that they probably just have it in their cycle of, like Jeff was telling me, he's not an SLP and he just goes to those conventions and stuff all over all the time. That's a big part of his job, is just going and like getting the word out about their academic programs.
Interesting. Shuing, would you be able to do us a quick favor? Could you get the Chomper Champ? It's the purple dog, Lulu?
The cat, yeah.
Cat, sorry. Lulu?
Lulu, yeah.
Got it.
Did you see why I named Lulu Lulu?
I'm
like
not
a whole story
completely sure.
it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that we could like get it in view so that people know what we mean. So let's get into, so this is Chomper Champs. This is what Steph went out there to basically like showcase. I have one quick question on these before we get into this one is Lulu and why it's named Lulu. So you're talking about like the gap that you found in this like feeding market. Mm-hmm. Do you think that Chomper Champs has resonated more because of like function, like it's just better, or because just aesthetically kids resonate with it? Or do you think it's like a combination of both?
I think it's a total combination of both. Like when I created my first Chomper Champs, I kind of just like, I had like dreams, of course, of you create something and you're like, oh wow, this is actually like really cool. But it was like when I started using it with kids and like it would just be on my shelf and I had no intention of using it with kids, and I'd have all the other cool like fun games and activities out, and kids would come in my room and they'd be like, can we play with the puppy today? When it's like we have all this other fun, like there's something I think aesthetically about the design that they really like. And I don't know what it is, but something about feeding things, like that's why games like Pop the Pig are so popular, and like Feed the Woozle, and like kids love puppets. Like there's something that I don't really know if there's like a term for it, but just like fundamentally, developmentally, kids love feeding things. And then we make it like super silly in the room too. It's just fun. So, and then also, I think like because kids like to feed things, and then really SLPs need things that are like grab and go. I mean, you can just grab it and grab like the word cards that come with it, or like just a bag of mini objects, and you can target so many goals with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think kids probably just want toys that have fun or unique interactions that they can do with them.
Yes. For
you
sure.
can't feed an action figure or whatever, so this is like a new fun thing that they can play with.
Yes, for sure. It's definitely kind of like novel in that. And there are things that you can feed, like there's, you know, like the toys that exist or like making your own things, but this is like super durable and it's easy cleanup because of the design I made with the removable base, and it just has some features. I just made it for exactly what an SLP would use it for, which doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I noticed about it versus other like pediatric materials, though, not to make this like a huge plug for your thing, I just think it's interesting. It is, it's like very high quality. Like it would be hard to break or like scuff up, which, you know, if you're an SLP, I would imagine a lot of the stuff that you get for kiddos might be off of, you know, like Amazon, and you have some like shipped product and it looks really good on the first go, but you know, you run it through like all these different kids that you're working with and it can kind of like snap over time. Like you actually might only need to get like one Chomper Champ and you're probably good to go.
Oh yeah, that's what like I mean, everything can break if you throw it hard enough, right?
Yeah.
Like, and like.
Oh yeah, I guess you always have to plan for that and what you guys do.
Yes, but no, I work with like an engineer who really helped me. Like when we first made like the base, it had like a weak point where if it dropped, because the base has that like hard angle, it would crack. So we just made some like modifications in like the design to make it like, it's really durable. I do a drop test at 4 feet onto a hard floor for my like quality testing, and it does not break.
Really?
So, yeah. I tried really hard to do that, and it was but my Chomper Champ that I used in my speech room, it's funny because the SLP who took my position, she'll post pictures sometimes on Instagram, and I see it like in her stuff. Like she's still using that, and I've had that Chomper Champ in my room for like 5 years. Like it's been in there, not that long, but it had been in there for a long time, and she's still using it. So
yeah,
that was a lot of thought on my end. Like I really wanted this to be something high quality that a lot of SLPs have to spend their own money on their materials. I was lucky enough in my clinic where I had a really generous budget, but that's not the case in most. So I want things that are affordable, long lasting, and like multifaceted where you can target almost any goal.
For sure. Yeah. Before Verse became a speech therapy company, one of the things that we were super heavily looking into was this being quality management software.
Oh,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, like if you were doing that test, like where you would store it and store the results, but it would have been for medical devices, just because that's what Shung and I did in school. Right. So we're like, maybe there's a way to kind of capitalize on the biomedical engineering experience, but
interesting.
Yeah, it was an okay idea. I definitely think that there's still a lot of opportunity in that market, but there's just a million different players in it. Yeah. So it wasn't really our jam.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of opportunity because like there's tons of medical devices, right? So
Yeah. For us, we just wanted to like see if there's a way to make like a differentiated product in there, and it just seemed like there was all of these people coming at it from every different angle that was hard to figure out if there was a way to stand out. So we ended up looking into like healthcare services instead of building healthcare tech.
One of the tests for an AAC device, like a speech generating device, that qualified it as like durable medical equipment that I used to prescribe this device to kids, is they put it in a dryer for like 2 minutes. If it doesn't break in the dryer, it was like one of the like DME tests. And I was like, I guess that's pretty durable. Chomper Champs wouldn't survive in a dryer because it'd be too hot, but...
Yeah, I actually talked to an SLP this week about AAC devices and them being qualified as like durable medical equipment because kids were throwing iPads.
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah. I always recommend getting like a device not as an iPad but as durable medical equipment because it will take a beating.
Yeah,
as a kid.
For sure.
And they should be using it all the time. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was really liking a lot of the vibes of that ASHA conference. Actually, before we get back into that, I totally sidestepped Lulu's origin story.
Oh, I don't have to tell it. You can cut this part out, but Lulu.
We're not cutting anything out, so if you're over it, we can just skip.
No, I told this story on my Instagram stories, but my grandma, who I love and adore, like I really love my grandma. And she's just this like sweet little old lady, and she lives out on a farm. And for years, she says she has this cat, and its name is Lulu. His name is Louie, and she calls him Lulu. but nobody ever sees this cat. So it's like a joke between my grandma, my husband, and I of like, oh, grandma and Lulu. Like, it's like we say, grandma, you're Delulu, because you think there's a cat, but there's not actually a cat.
No way.
Her cat does exist. Like, she has a cat. But in like a decade, I've seen this cat like one time. So it's like this ongoing, like, grandma, are you sure there's a cat? Like, you keep putting food out, but are you sure it's real? So I decided to make an ode to my grandma by naming it Lulu after her non-fictional cat.
Yeah. Okay. When you said, like, do you know the origin story of Lulu? I was like, oh, crap, did I miss anything? But there's no way that you would have told me that. I would have remembered it. That's pretty notable.
It's stupid, but it makes my grandma and I laugh.
Yeah, it should. That's sweet. So, yeah, on to the other parts of Asha. Let's see, what else was interesting? I was super excited to see Liz in person. She was with one of the vendors there, so that was cool.
Oh, she's so sweet.
Yeah, we actually got to go to an AI talk in I think the opposite building of you.
Oh, you guys went to one together?
Yeah.
Nice.
I actually got to spend like a good amount of my day with her. It was really fun.
She's got a lot of really great like business ideas.
Yeah, she's smart.
Yeah, I really like Liz.
Yeah, I love having her on the team. We went to Starbucks, which was a funny move in Seattle because there was like not.
There's better coffee.
She's like, yeah, we should stop in there. I didn't say anything. Liz, I'm sorry if you see this, but I was just like, dang, there might be like some more low-key spots that we could go to right now, or like, maybe find something cool on Reddit. But yeah, so we got our bike places, and she covered mine, so very, very grateful. Sorry for being a snob. And then we went to this AI talk, but like, I don't think it was super SLP oriented. I don't know. I thought that it got a little crazy. Like, it got to the point where you have this room full of SLPs because all of them are like, hey, I haven't gotten like a medical scribe. I haven't really seen AI like come to market in my field versus maybe like other healthcare fields, because all of them are starting to get the AI to like read their notes for them and stuff. Mm-hmm. So like, maybe it'll be about that. And then it gets to the point in this lecture where they're literally talking about like quantum computing to 200 SLPs in a room. And I'm like, I'm the only person with any education in this. And I'm like, dude, this is like way above my pay grade. I don't know what's going on right now.
That's kind of a bummer, but I think that that's actually pretty reflective in our field of like, there's so, like, we operate on evidence-based practice, right? So there's all this research that exists that we need to better improve our practice, but I feel like that the communication of like the research-based information to applicable clinical skills does not translate a lot of the time. Like, I wish it did more. But I've been, not about AI, but I've been to many like CEUs over my career where they're talking about all this information, and even a lot of grad school. It's like all this information that doesn't actually help me help people. So that's a bummer. I think that there were some AI talks on like how to use AI in your practice to like reduce like demands. I believe that there were a couple of talks like that at ASHA, which were hopefully
that's super actionable.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so like, to be fair, it was a very like interesting talk, and there were pieces of it that were definitely actionable for some people. Like, they told you how to program or how to make your own GPT such that you could basically like either like it could write on behalf of you or it could like respond to clients for you.
That's cool.
So I definitely think that there's something there, but it was a lot to take in. I mean, this is like a classic thing across all of healthcare and academia though, right? Like, someone can get like so into their project that it gets a little like hard to follow or like actually implement in your practice.
For sure. And then also like research created in like this like vacuum where sure, those are the results of the research study, but all of the confounding factors in actual practice when you're working with real clients in this like non-controllable setting a lot of the time, it makes it hard. So
yeah, I mean, one piece of research that I saw that it seemed really implementable, I guess, or at least they're doing it at the University of Kentucky across like 7 different specialties, was they made a quality scoring system for all their like telehealth sessions.
Oh, that's
so there's
cool.
like 20 to 30 things that you have to do almost as like a checklist to say this was a good telehealth session, like for HIPAA or for privacy, say, is anybody there? Or like, and like close the door and like make sure no one's around. Just
That's
like
actually
stuff
really
like
cool.
that.
We could use that at Verse, yeah.
Yeah. It was, but that's the thing. It wasn't like crazy, mind blowing, interesting. It was just like super practical. And I was like, oh, that could actually like be used and applied. And what was really cool, I mean, I yapped with this lady for like 2 hours about it. I just thought it was like really relevant to what we were doing. But she started that research in 2014. So she was like doing, she was just doing.
That's a long time.
Right. Like she was doing teletherapy in Kentucky, which presumably has like a pretty high like rural population that needs access to speech help.
Yeah.
So she was early to the game and she was basically trying to be like, no, you can do this in a viable way that actually helps people and works and is efficacious. And basically to like prove her point, part of it was like, I can make a full quality system that dictates like, is this a good session or not? And then 2020 came around and that was when she started to have, I might be botching this part, but basically at some point she was able to have her own class, and her class was different specialties. So it was like OTs, PTs, SLPs, nurse practitioners. And what she would do is, because the OT doesn't know anything about the SLP and the SLP does, I mean, obviously they do, but like they don't know a lot about what goes into the session. She would be like, OT, pretend to be mom, SLP, your SLP, and then OT at their house has like a pillow that's like the child, or like PT is a good example because you may have to like help them move around. So maybe the SLP has to role play as a mom, and then they have a pillow, and then the PT is learning how to guide the mom, the simulated mom who's the SLP. I know I'm talking a little too back and forth here, but basically you had everyone who wasn't in a given. I did
lose you a little bit.
Yeah, that was stupid.
When the pillow came in.
Yeah. So basically there's like, this shouldn't be that hard to explain. It's just been a long day. And you're the one who's been filming all day. So like you have the person who's not in a specialty pretend to be the mom, and then they have a kid who's a pillow. And then the person who is in the specialty administers a telehealth session to that person.
Gotcha.
So like all the people that aren't in the specialty just like role play as patients, and then they mix and match between the whole class. So like everybody gets to learn how to conduct a telehealth session with someone who has like no context. Because like,
got it.
If a PT did it for a PT, then they would already know.
You know too much.
Exactly.
To effectively evaluate the situation.
Yeah. So she made this like mix and match class, and then in the mix and match class, she was able to build out all these like quality measures, which are like, hey, if you're able to do all these things, like it's a good session. And it was across all specialties in healthcare.
Interesting. No, see, like information like that, like I love a checklist. Like tell me exactly what I need to do, especially like busy clinicians. At least at my clinic, Kelly and I, we love protocols. Like we love, and like therapy materials that just like come where it's like with a whole like set of like protocol. Here's how you do it, modify as you need, because no two kids are exactly the same. And that's like clinical skill, but things that just come ready to go are absolutely fantastic. So you don't have to do as much like demanding planning work. You can pull it off the shelf and implement it. Is fantastic.
Where do you get that Is it something that like your practice has just been doing it this way forever and then you can just like adopt it? Or
No,
is there like companies that send out?
there's programs that do it. So like for reading, for example, for my reading therapy, I've done like a lot of training, so I have the background knowledge, but the program that I prefer to use for my literacy intervention is something called All About Spelling. And it's literally a workbook. You pull it off. It's got like color-coded tiles you use, and it walks you step by step on how to do this, how to approach this. And again, I modify it as needed with my clinical background and the needs of the child. Or like there's like story champs for narrative language, or social thinking for social pragmatic. Like, and these are all like curriculums designed for SLPs to target these various areas.
Well, where do you even know where to start when you're building out a practice or building out like your subset of a practice? Like, do people just tell you these are the 5 good curriculums for your specialty? Or do you just like learn over time which ones to adopt?
I think you just learn over time. Like I learned about a lot of mine when I was a student of like, you know, in my extern and internships, going out and seeing what are these other SLPs using and like, do I like that? So you really learn from each other. I've been introduced to protocols through like CEUs, like, yeah, I think it's just like a collective of like, you will be exposed to it, whether it's in grad school, CEUs, your colleagues, and you just kind of like find these programs that you like. Programs have caveats. Like I said, not every child is going to benefit from like a strict protocol and you have to get creative, but in general, they just make it so nice for a busy SLP to pull it off the shelf and you don't have to do all this planning work and the child is going to benefit from it.
Wow.
Yeah.
In a program like that, do they have a bunch of case studies on like how it works?
A lot of them are evidence-based, yeah. And the thing is like a lot of them might not have, like All About Spelling is an example. All About Spelling is actually a spelling workbook designed for homeschool parents to teach their child like how to spell. But me as a clinician with my background in like literacy intervention and the continuing education that I've done to be able to effectively not just like teach a kid to read, but be a true like interventionist. Like I take my clinical skill and combine it with this thing that's like easy to digest. And All About Spelling isn't, you know, evidence-based for reading intervention, but it's based on this concept of Orton-Gillingham approach with multi-sensory instruction is all interwoven into this program. And those are things that are heavily evidence-based. So you take an evidence-based approach and then you combine it with like your creative approach to how you want to implement it is how a lot of them operate. Like social thinking they're not as popular as they were, especially with more like neurodivergent affirming practices coming into play. But social thinking is a social pragmatic intervention where they create like tools and resources. And Michelle Garcia Winner is the SLP who created social thinking. And she has this series of books and there's a handbook that's like, that goes with it. And I'm not sure if social thinking has been studied like directly, if it's like, oh, social thinking is evidence-based, or if it's just the concepts behind social thinking for social pragmatic intervention, or what's evidence-based, if that makes sense. I might be rambling about it.
I need you to go back quite a bit because I'm not super clear on what you mean by being more interventionist.
So what makes somebody a skilled therapist, and I think about this with reading because that's where like one of my passions lay. Anybody can sit down with a kid and claim they're teaching a child to read. An interventionist is somebody who fully understands and can repair something that's disordered, if that makes sense. So a parent can sit down and teach their child how to read, but what happens when that child is not acquiring the skill in the developmental way that we expect them to? That's what intervention is, to come in, identify the area of deficit, and from an evidence-based approach, repair that deficit to get somebody to what would be like a typical range of skill. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. So the reason anyone can't just do that is because they don't know what a typical range is and they don't know like what the root causes of a disorder could be?
100%. Yes. It's like a highly skilled, like, why can't you be a doctor? Like, well, because you don't have the years of training and experience and, you know, residency to be able to do that. And there's a lot of like snake oil salesmen out there who say like, oh, like, I don't want to put anybody on blast, but there's these like flashcards that exist where you put a flashcard into a little device. They're on Amazon. Yeah. And it'll say the name of the flashcard. And the marketing of this product is like, it's going to improve your child's speech. When there's actually like active evidence that says toys that make noise and have lights actually decrease a child's willingness to like communicate in an interaction with a parent.
Really?
Because it's taking up the space instead of like meaningful communication going on between a parent and a child, which is how you develop language. Now they're just playing with these toys that are filling up all the space.
Right.
And those are things an interventionist knows.
Yeah.
That somebody who's not trained and highly qualified just, you don't know because you don't study the research. It's not your area of study. You haven't been doing it. It's just like, yeah, that's kind of just like a prime example right there of like things seem simple, but they're not as simple as they seem.
Yeah, I'm at risk of sounding really dumb here, but with a toy like that, can you like confuse what the kid is doing with progress because they're like interacting with the toy better, but they're not necessarily getting better at like core speech?
No, a true speech language pathologist who's an interventionist would not make that mistake, but a parent might. Yeah. Because they're looking at their kid and they're like, oh, they're sitting there longer. They're playing with this when before they weren't playing with any toys, which I'm not saying that that's not meaningful. I'm not saying there's no value in that device at all.
But to say it's going to like completely cure all of their...
But to advertise it as this is going to improve your child's speech and language, the only evidence-based way to improve speech and language is through speech and language therapy.
Is that true? Like, is that the only thing that we have evidence on right now?
Well, the only thing, if there's like a true disorder, like it's the most, I shouldn't say the only thing, the best way to improve speech and language.
Most well understood as well.
Yes, I'll backtrack. Because there's a lot of things that can improve speech and language, like parents spending more quality time.
I was going to say,
yeah. But a lot of parents don't know to do that until they get to the interventionist, the speech therapist, to help support them through parent coaching to be able to implement those things.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Sorry for not being clear on that. Yeah, I mean, the last thing that I wanted to talk through was, so going all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, we talked about
sorry, took some turns here.
Oh, dude, no.
I can go down rabbit holes.
I mean, I just genuinely get curious about this stuff, and I need to know it for my job. But yeah, like I went to ASHA basically just to meet people and just, I don't know, I want to show some support for your business and
I appreciate
see Liz
that.
and stuff. That was cool. And it's just an excuse to be in Seattle, and I like it up there. But yeah, so like one of the things that really stood out, probably the highlight of the whole trip, was that you seem to have found like some product market fit. I'm not going to like try to talk up your business, and I know you like are very humble about it. But it was very cool to see that like in our section, or, you know, the entrepreneur section, there's clearly like one company that was by SLPs for SLPs, and it just led to like a constant line the entire time. And Steph won't say this, but I will, that like she was running out of inventory faster than she thought she would, which is always like a really good sign, obviously.
Yeah, it was really cool.
I mean, just like tell me how that all went for you, like how the come down is from that experience, and like if you're
it was crazy. Like I just got in my car at the end of every day and I literally just like cried, like being so like just like humbled of like how cool like all these SLPs were and how like kind and like receptive and like,
yeah, I was enjoying that as well.
It was really cool. Like I just like was so overwhelmed with like gratitude and like going to the convention. I've been working on my business Chomper Champs. It's like years and years now, really before it actually like ever turned into a business. Like when you have an idea, it takes a long time, especially something like this physical product.
Right.
It like has gone through so many iterations and like ideas. And so to finally be at this like place where I was like, okay, the convention is here in my home state. We're going to go do this. I was like, I 3D print them all myself. So like it takes time to create my inventory.
For sure.
And so I was like, I'm going to take 100 and maybe I'll sell 30. And then I'll just have a whole bunch of inventory to bring home and sell on my website. And to sell out as fast as I did was just like so incredibly like validating. Like the SLPs were all so kind, and to just be in front of people, because it's not a product that you intuitively look at and you're like people ask me all the time, like, well, what does it do?
Yes,
and I'm
that
like,
happened a lot.
Yeah, it's like, well, it doesn't really do anything. It's like a tool that you implement in this way to increase engagement. Like it's kind of like niche. And so to be in front of all these SLPs who like actually got it, it was just really cool. I felt very humbled and very like, just like grateful for all my customers. And then Rochelle at Speech Tree Co., she had the mini objects. Her business, I admire so much. And she has been like so supportive of Chomper Champs for the last like year and a half, 2 years. And so all her customers came up and everybody was just so nice and supportive. And I think that that's something that I really love about our field from like a creative perspective is like all of these like creators I've connected with on Instagram have just been all so like supportive and uplifting.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, so yeah, it was just like, can you tell? 'Cause I'm rambling. I was just like so overwhelmed of just like how like all of that work leading up to that at the convention and it like going so well was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. I think whenever you go out to do your own venture, especially when it's something that hasn't been done before, you're really offering yourself up to just like the universe and whatever's going to happen to you. And it's really like, I don't want to get like too spiritual about it, but there's just moments that really, really keep you going and they feel like very powerful. Whether it's like you just met the right person, you recruited the right person, or like yesterday we just got like a testimonial for Kristen that was just like extremely strong, and it just like felt really good to see that.
Yeah, so cool.
Because like we've been making a lot of changes on the site and like we're trying to make it convert better, and like definitely in a lull period with that. And then you like see the one client who's like, Miss Kristen like changed my life, and she's like, it's like,
it feels so good.
Yeah, not to show off Kristen too much there, but yeah, I mean, you get these little like just
she's awesome. So
yeah, I mean, she crushes. But there's like these, it's just such a hard road that when you get these little like bumps, it's something that I feel like you should celebrate. And it was just like really cool after, years of you doing this, that you get one of those like bumps that keeps you going.
Yeah. It was very cool to be like, oh, this is actually like a legitimate like business that's like, helping people. And the feedback I got was just really good. It was exciting. It was a moment for sure.
Totally. Yeah. I remember when we had to pivot, and then once we found like this specialty, and like first it was SLPs saying that they would actually like using it, and that felt really good when we had our first like SLP like basically make their business be better because we got them a new client or whatever. That felt really, really good because that was the first time where we felt like we delivered like real value. Right. The old business, not to get like too far into it, but it delivered like academic value where we had a study that said that it was effective, but there just weren't a lot of people that were like using it in their practice.
Yeah.
But the first time you see someone, no matter how much it costs us to get to the point of like one person benefiting from it, that was really cool. And then once an actual like client was willing to share that they were like really happy about the therapeutic experience, because all we can do on the tech side is just make sure that there's really good people coming into Verse, and ultimately it's like their practice to run. But that just like felt really awesome because it's like, oh, the whole machine is starting to do what it's supposed to do.
For sure.
Yeah, which is cool to see that with Chomper Champs. I think one of the things that we talked about was like, how do you translate that vibe of for SLPs, by SLPs, or like whatever resonated at that conference, and how do you like further put it into your online channels so that you can just make this thing go crazy.
Yeah.
Because you already have like a killer Instagram, but I feel like there is something that got tapped into that day that could just be like so awesome to see you be able to do it like over social, so that like every day can be like Asha.
I feel like I'm like 10 years too old to be really good at social media.
But,
But I do have a fantastic intern who makes hilarious content. But I agree. No, like trying to harness. And it is hard because I think that like at the convention, like being able to truly like demo it was kind of like a key factor. And I had customers come up to me at the convention who bought a Chomper Champ, 6 months ago. And they were like, I didn't know it included all of this.
They thought it was a sculpture.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It's like an expensive sculpture to have on your desk. Hold your paper clips. But no, they were like, oh, I use it, but I didn't know it had all of this stuff. And to me, it's really clear on my website, and it's really clear like in some of the content I put out. So that was super helpful. Like I think like when you run a business, you're too into it. Like you have to be open to that feedback. So that was really eye-opening to me too, for like that concept of like, you know what you know, but you also don't know what you do know. Like I didn't know that I wasn't communicating, that I have all these resources, that come with it. Like you don't have to pay extra for all that stuff I was demoing. Like that's all included. So that was interesting for me too. And how to communicate that onto social media, which social media is not my favorite thing. It's not my favorite way to spend my time doing, but I do love to make a funny video.
Yeah. I'll make sure to clip up that part so we can put it on social.
Yeah.
I feel similarly for us, honestly. We have to find a way to, when somebody goes with another service, they probably don't want to talk to you, but I feel like we really just need to isolate like what was it every time.
For sure. I think that the biggest reason people don't go with Verse from like all the intake calls and stuff is one, people aren't prepared to pay out of pocket, or, even if they have insurance that we're in network with, like, the fees associated with it.
Right.
And people have this like idea that in-person therapy is better.
Right.
And
which
I will say
sometimes.
for some cases it is. Like I'm not going to say if I were a parent and had a child with a certain set of needs that I wouldn't prioritize in-person therapy.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think that those are the two biggest ones. So I think, but Verse is hard, I feel like, to communicate, even harder than Chomper Champs, because Chomper Champs, I can show it off. It's like a physical thing.
Right.
But yeah, Verse is trickier to like explain all of the cool stuff about Verse.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of what I'm trying to do with all the video content. Like if we're really doing it right, I would hope that everybody's profile on Verse can have, several people speaking to, like Kristen's a great example, worked with Kristen, predominantly virtual, was with a kid, worked great for my kid at least.
Yeah.
And then, if I can just get the SLPs to kind of talk through everything and get like multimedia, like you can feel like you're really meeting these people. Another thing that I might look into is like a messaging feature where you can send like the intro message to the SLP. And it's Shoeing's idea.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you walk a fine line there where it's like, I'm not going to spam someone in our network, but at the same time, like I think if it was just one message, there's a way to do that, then that could be pretty cool. Like just one intro email, and then if our SLP wants to take it, they can. If not, maybe our intake team has access to the email and they can respond and be like, hey, it's just like not the right time to work with so-and-so because the holidays are super busy or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they can be like, this is a great option.
Yeah, for sure. No, I like that. I think that like what people crave in healthcare, like we're all just like funneled through these huge healthcare corporations, like, these massive companies that providers work for. And the limitations of that are like, for your primary care, you get a 15-minute visit when you schedule with primary care, a 20-minute visit because they're cranked through this like intricate system. And a system like Verse, of course, everybody has time limitations, but that one-to-one connection of like the patient to the SLP, kind of like I was talking about in one of my videos earlier, like that rapport is one of, if not the most important like factor on a patient being able to like make success in therapy.
It is.
Like that relationship is so critical, and being able to start that as early as possible, I think is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely our number one issue right now is like, once somebody does the evaluation and meets who they're going to work with, because like all we try to do is control the people that like get into the network and vet them, and we'll prune the network if somebody isn't getting like great client feedback. So we try to make sure there's like a quality bar there, but it makes it so like if you just meet the SLP, it's, unless it's a very odd case where, you know, it just like was completely misaligned and that maybe they were misqualified for virtual. But most of the time the SLP basically sells themselves. Like when you look at the retention numbers and like once people start, they're all like pretty happy. Seems like the testimonials are working out.
100%.
It's just like, how do you get them to know Paul before they commit this like to this therapy journey?
Right.
That's the game that Shuing, me, Danny, you have to get figured out. And I'm sure we will, but yeah, I think that's where we're struggling a little.
Yeah, I think that that's something that like in this like broken healthcare system, like just having an immediate like connection and access to, you know, see who your provider is like very important.
Yeah.
Versus when I call Kaiser and they just match me with like whatever, you know, primary care is available, you know, within the next 6 months or whatever. Like it's so backed up.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, it's common across like literally every healthcare specialty.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in speech, it got a little heavier post-pandemic with some of the learning loss that happened too. Like even if you just look at the numbers, part of the reason we decided to go on the field, like the internet searches to get help with this are up like 20% year over year.
That does not surprise me.
Really?
Yep. Yes, because a lot of the time children are initially identified for a speech and language deficit when they're in the schools because they've been home until, you know, they enter kindergarten or they go to a daycare, and the daycares aren't staffed with like, you know, certified teachers and like qualified like support specialists. Daycares are a different type of like early learning professional. So they weren't going to school and they weren't getting identified as well. And it's so complicated. Backlog. Yeah. There's like a backlog of the older students along with like the younger students who weren't being exposed to language the same way because everybody was just home for years. Like, you know, if you're 4 and you were born in, you know, 2020, over half your life was homebound. Yeah. That's hard. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. I mean, I guess that's probably a good note to end on, or a kind of a dark note to end on. But hey, we got SLPs if you need help with that.
They're all awesome. I love our SLPs at Verse. I just am so impressed with literally all of them.
Yeah, it's a great group. But yeah, I mean, thank you for doing this. This will be our first installment of the Fancier Pod. We'll keep testing around with these formats, but I kind of liked how this one felt versus the remote one that we did. So
yeah, this was cool. That. Yeah, SLPs are always down to yap. So we're chatty by nature.
Clinically trained.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for doing this.